Insanity, written and read by Malcolm Cowper. As twilight approached, Mabel Evans glanced anxiously at the sky. Would the bombers come again tonight? Probably. They had been the last 2 nights, and with typical German thoroughness, they would make a third visit tonight. The first night to set the city on fire, the second to bomb with high explosive the still burning city, the third to destroy what was still standing. Their target was Cardiff Docks, but Mabel's house in Marion Street was dangerously close to them. Already several houses in the street had been destroyed. Hers might well be the next. She was glad that her 2 children had been safely evacuated to Carmarthenshire. Much as she missed them, it was comforting to know that they were well away from this carnage and being looked after by a kindly farming family. But with her living on the front line in Cardiff and her husband in the Air Force, she couldn't help wondering what would happen to the children if they were both killed. She packed a few sandwiches and a flask of tea in her bag and lay down on the settee to wait the siren that she was convinced would start to wail. And it did. Just after 10 came the dreadful banshee howl that sent everyone scurrying to the public shelter. There they sat for hours, listening to the crump of the guns, the high-pitched whistling, and then the sickening crash of the exploding bombs, the roar of collapsing masonry, the clangor of bells as the fire crews tried vainly to control the inferno. Hour after hour it went on, until they feared there must be nothing left of the city. When at last the all-clear sounded, everyone emerged bleary-eyed to find an utterly changed landscape of rubble, dust and smoke where once had been homes. Sick with anxiety, Mabel raced back to Marion Street and found, to her intense relief, her house still intact. But across the road, in a huddle of despair, stood the Jenkins family from number 34, staring in disbelief at the half of their home that still stood, like the open front of a doll's house, the rooms now exposed to the world. Feeling almost guilty that her house had been spared, she coaxed them across and made them tea, offering what little comfort she could. When it was time for her to go to work in the armaments factory at Llanishen, she told them they could stay as long as they liked. Mabel Evans would live another day. As twilight approached, Flight Sergeant Sidney Evans struggled into his cumbersome flying suit as he and his fellow crew members of Lancaster K for Kitty prepared for the night's raid. Their target was Hamburg, not one they would in any way describe as a piece of cake. Quite the opposite. It was one of the most heavily defended cities in Germany. But through its docks came shipments of vital iron ore from Sweden, so they had to be destroyed. This would be their 14th mission of the 30 they had to do to complete a tour. Their chances were slim. Only 70% of crews managed a complete tour. They knew this, and as 0 hour approached, each man battled to control his gut-wrenching fear. At 28, Sid was the old man of the crew. The rest were in their early 20s. The youngest, Colin, was just 18. He was their 3rd rear gunner of the tour. It was the most dangerous position, for the enemy fighters always attacked from behind. Sid was the bomb aimer, so for most of the flight he manned the relatively safe nose guns until they approached the target. Then he would lie down on his stomach and, bomb sight in hand, would look through the perspex nose cone and direct the pilot to the target with instructions such as left a bit, left, left, steady, steady. For several minutes the aircraft had to fly straight and level, the pilot unable to maneuver it to avoid searchlights and the barrage of flak exploding all around them. Then, bombs gone, and the plane, relieved of its burden, would leap several feet up in the air. Equally relieved were the crew, for they could now head for home, their work done. Not that they were by any means out of danger, for they would be pursued all the way to the coast by avenging enemy fighters. But they reached the coast unharmed. Dawn was breaking as they reached England, and the rising sun gave promise of a fine day. Not that they would see much of it, for once they had been debriefed and had their bacon and eggs, they would be off to bed for the day. Maybe that night they would be on another raid, or maybe they'd be stood down and would spend their raucous evening in the Plough and Harrow, drinking away their fear. Sidney Evans would live another day. Another day for Mabel and Sid in the insane world of 1943.